Imagine being trapped at the bottom of the ocean with a prehistoric monster, a nuclear reactor counting down to meltdown, and your escape pod destroyed. That's exactly what happens to the crew of DeepStar Six when they accidentally blast open an ancient cavern that should have stayed sealed forever. Of the 11 people who started this mission, only 2 will make it back to the surface. Here's how it all went wrong. 6 months underwater. That's how long the crew of DeepStar Six has been stuck at the bottom of the ocean. And they're counting down the days until they can finally go home. But what they don't know yet is that some of them won't make it back to the surface alive. McBride and Collins wake up in their quarters as the alarm goes off. He's been having the same nightmare about drowning for 3 nights in a row. She's worried about him. They talk about Captain Laidlaw, how perfect his life seems with his wife and kids back home. She asks McBride why he's never settled down. He tells her he's never been in one place long enough to really know anyone. But there's something between them, something neither of them is quite ready to name. The crew assembles in a smaller submarine and launches from their main observation pod called Sea-Track. McBride and Richardson pilot the sub toward DeepStar Six, their underwater naval facility. They're supposed to be there for shift change, but they're running late. Snyder's already on the radio complaining about it. What's waiting for them is about to turn this routine day into a nightmare. The sub docks at DeepStar Six. The crew's been working overnight to position a missile sled on the ocean floor. Their mission is to install a nuclear missile platform down here, turning this corner of the seafloor into a hidden weapons base. But there's a problem. Hodges warns them they need to scan the area first to make sure there aren't any geological faults that could destabilize everything. During breakfast, Captain Laidlaw orders Scarpelli to take the rest of the day off. She's been working too hard. But Scarpelli's a marine biologist, and she's not interested in rest. She's interested in what's down there in the deep. Collins contacts the facility's designer, Dr. Van Gelder, over the radio. She's got bad news. The scans show a massive cavern right where they're supposed to install the missiles. Regulations say they can't put the platform there. But Van Gelder doesn't care about regulations. He wants the cavern collapsed and the missiles installed by the end of the week. That's his only concern. Scarpelli hears about the cavern and immediately wants to explore it. She's seen reports of strange marine life in this area going back 150 years. Things that shouldn't exist. But Van Gelder shuts her down. No time for science. They're on a deadline. This decision is about to cost them everything. Hodges and Osborne pilot an underwater tractor out to the cavern site. They plant the explosives and detonate them. The charge breaks open the cavern wall, but it also causes the seafloor to start collapsing. The tractor has to reverse at emergency speed to avoid falling into the expanding hole. Collins, watching from Sea-Track, tells them to send down a small probe to see what's inside the cavern. The probe descends into the darkness. It goes deeper and deeper until suddenly something attacks it. The guidance cable snaps. They've lost the probe. Hodges makes a decision. He's going down there himself to retrieve it. He detaches the tractor's control section, which becomes a mini-sub, and descends into the cavern. They find the probe and start pulling it back when Osborne reports something on sonar. Something big. Something moving toward them fast. Hodges sees it at the last second. The sheer size makes him panic. He starts to call in an emergency to Collins, and then the signal cuts out. Complete radio silence. Back at Sea-Track, Berciaga frantically searches for the sub on sonar. There's nothing. No contact at all. Collins can't understand how something that size could just vanish. Berciaga cycles through every sensor they have. Still nothing. And then they pick up something else, something moving too fast to be the missing sub. Collins tries to warn DeepStar Six, but Snyder's left the control room. Her message goes unanswered. The object changes direction and slams into Sea-Track with massive force. Collins declares a mayday as the entire installation shakes. The creature attacks again and again, nearly pushing Sea-Track over an underwater cliff before it finally breaks off and disappears. Collins is badly injured. She checks on Berciaga and finds him trapped under heavy equipment, his legs completely pinned. She tries to free him, but it's no use. The weight's too much, and water's flooding in through hull ruptures. Captain Laidlaw and McBride launch a rescue mission. On the way to Sea-Track, their sonar picks up the same contact Collins detected. Laidlaw's stunned by how fast it's moving. He orders them to stop the sub, blow the ballast tanks, and shut down all the lights. For about a minute, they sit in complete darkness and silence. The object seems to lose interest and moves away. But it's still out there, hunting. They reach Sea-Track and see the devastation. The installation's tilted at a dangerous angle, balanced on the edge of an underwater cliff. They manage to dock and work their way inside, finding Collins and the trapped Bursiaga in the control room. But as they start the rescue, Sea-Track shifts violently. They check Bursiaga's pulse. He's already gone. They begin evacuating, but the installation shifts again. A hatch slams shut, trapping Captain Laidlaw. His back's broken. There's no way to get him out. Collins and McBride refuse to leave him. But while they're trying to manually open the hatch, Laidlaw makes a choice. He throws a switch that floods the compartment he's in. Collins and McBride are forced to abandon him. They reach their sub and undock just as Sea-Track lurches one final time and collapses over the side of the cliff, taking Captain Laidlaw with it into the abyss. Back at DeepStar Six, Collins explains what happened. Scarpelli thinks the lights on the probe and Sea-Track must have attracted whatever's out there. The message comes through from the surface. They're authorized to evacuate. Everyone starts preparing to leave. During a medical exam, the doctor hears something unexpected. A second heartbeat. Collins is pregnant, she tells McBride, and his reaction is immediate and positive. Maybe when they get back to the surface, things can be different for them, but they can't leave yet. Van Gelder brings up the missiles. They can't just abandon nuclear weapons on the ocean floor. Someone has to secure them first. That someone is Snyder. What happens next changes everything. Snyder starts the procedure to secure the missiles. The computer asks him to enter the reason they're being abandoned. He types in one word, aggression, but the computer interprets this as enemy military aggression and asks if it should detonate the missiles. Snyder, not understanding what's happening, confirms. The computer begins a countdown. Van Gelder realizes what's about to happen and screams at everyone to brace for impact. A massive nuclear shockwave hammers into DeepStar Six. The structure survives the blast, but the damage is catastrophic. Fires break out everywhere. Water floods into multiple compartments. Once the fires are out and the flooding's contained, Van Gelder delivers the bad news. The crew quarters are flooded. The oxygen generation system's been destroyed. They have maybe 8 hours of breathable air left. But that's not even the worst part. The reactor that powers DeepStar Six has been damaged. It's going to explode in a few hours. And the escape pod? The decompression system's offline. Without it, they can't safely reach the surface. They're trapped at the bottom of the ocean with a nuclear reactor counting down to meltdown. Collins studies the damage and finds a solution. They can reroute power around the damaged lines and get the decompression system working again. The crew immediately starts making the modifications. But someone has to go outside in a diving suit to complete the repairs. That's Richardson's job. Richardson puts on a bulky deep dive suit and goes outside DeepStar Six. He's working on a critical weld when he realizes something's wrong. He can feel it. Something's out there with him. He sends a frantic message about getting back to the airlock. The crew assumes he's finished and triggers the retrieval system to bring him back inside. As the suit rises out of the water in the airlock chamber, they rush to release Richardson. Then Snyder sees it. Something else is in the airlock with them. Before they can react, a massive crab-like creature emerges from the water. It's covered in a black and orange shell, with claws the size of a man. The thing reaches up and bites Richardson in half, tearing through the reinforced diving suit like paper. Everyone scrambles to evacuate the room. The creature lunges forward and grabs Scarpelli. She doesn't have time to scream. Snyder, in a moment of pure panic, slams the hatch shut, while Collins and McBride are still trying to get out. Collins realizes what he's done and manually overrides the lock, freeing the others just in time. McBride goes after Snyder for his cowardice. Collins has to pull him away. But there's no time for this. They still need to get the decompression system online, and that creature's between them and the equipment they need. Van Gelder examines what they saw. It's some kind of prehistoric arthropod, like a crab but many times larger than anything that should exist. The crew arms themselves with spear guns loaded with CO2 cartridges and pump-action shotguns. The plan is to hit it with the cartridges and make the gas expand inside its body until it bursts. They re-enter the flooded chamber and set up strobe lights to disorient the creature. They spread out through the room, weapons ready, but they can't find it. McBride starts working on the airlines, moving quickly. Then the creature appears. Everyone opens fire with the shotguns. In the chaos, Van Gelder slips and falls backward onto Snyder's spear gun. The CO2 cartridge lodges in his chest and starts expanding. Part of Van Gelder's chest inflates grotesquely and then explodes. Snyder watches in horror as the man who designed DeepStar Six is gone in seconds. He drops his weapon and runs. Back in the safe area, the survivors try to deal with Snyder. He's convinced everyone blames him for Van Gelder's death, even though they all saw it was an accident. Dr. Norris manages to calm him down enough to give him a sedative, but it's clear Snyder's mind is fracturing. Collins, McBride, and Norris go to prepare the decompression pod. They leave Snyder alone, sedated and quiet. That's when Snyder starts seeing things. Van Gelder appears to him, accusing him, blaming him for everything. Snyder completely loses his grip on reality. He runs to the escape pod and launches it, bypassing the entire decompression sequence. The pod rockets toward the surface. Inside, Snyder's nose starts bleeding. Then lesions form on his arms and face. The pressure change is destroying his body from the inside out. The bleeding intensifies until his entire body can't handle the stress. Snyder explodes inside the pod. In the remaining safe area, the three survivors take stock of their situation. Collins, McBride, and Norris. They've got 3 hours before the reactor explodes. McBride looks at Collins and asks her to marry him. She says yes. McBride has an idea. If he can swim through the flooded sections of DeepStar Six, he can reach the mini-sub they arrived in and bring it around to the decompression chamber. It's their only chance. He goes. While he's gone, Collins and Norris hear something. A tapping sound at the hatch. They think it's McBride and open it. A wall of water slams into them. They fight to close the hatch again. Norris shouts for Collins to get into the pressure chamber. As Collins climbs in, they hear movement in the water. The creature's in the room with them. Norris grabs a defibrillator from a medical station. The creature attacks. She tries to shock it, but it doesn't work. The paddles recharge. Norris waits for the creature to come close again, then plunges the defibrillator paddles into the water. The electrical current surges through the water. Norris convulses and collapses. The creature thrashes violently, badly injured, and then slips beneath the surface. Collins scrambles into the decompression chamber and finds McBride already there. He made it. They watch as the creature seems to die, its massive body sinking into the water. Hours later, an alarm sounds. Decompression's complete. They've got minutes before the reactor blows. McBride and Collins race to the mini-sub and launch just as the reactor goes critical. The underwater explosion sends massive shockwaves through the ocean. They fight their way through the turbulence, the sub getting tossed around like a toy. They break the surface. Collins and McBride deploy a life raft and start climbing in. That's when the creature suddenly surfaces right next to them. It's not finished. The thing attacks the sub with McBride still on it. He can't get free. In a split-second decision, McBride releases all the sub's remaining fuel and fires a flare gun directly into it. A massive fireball erupts around the sub. The flames rage for several minutes before the sub finally explodes. Collins watches in horror, certain McBride's gone. The creature thrashes in the flames and then goes still. It's finally over. Collins is on the verge of giving up when she sees movement in the water. McBride surfaces, alive. They embrace in the life raft as the camera pulls back, showing two survivors floating alone on a calm, empty sea.